Welcome to the Irishman, Englishman and Scotsman Football Podcast. Hello, good evening and welcome to another episode of the Irishman, Englishman and Scotsman Football Podcast. Joining me are the Trinamic Trio back in Austria. Kev, how are you doing?
Blooming marvellous.
Blooming still in sunny Brighton. Joe?
Not a good week, JP. Not a good week.
We'll talk about that later on. And Fino in Scotland.
Yeah, how are you doing, guys?
Good. Right, lads, cracking on another full programme beginning on Saturday afternoon, Central European time. Aston Villa at home to Arsenal. Aston Villa, a lot of people fancy them to beat West Ham, convincingly beaten, and Arsenal just basically imploded. David Luiz did against Wolves. Fino, I didn't obviously see the West Ham Aston Villa game, but were you value for money or were Villa unlucky?
I don't think Villa were unlucky. I don't think that they could, have any issues with the result. I think they lacked a bit of tempo and a bit of pace against West Ham, and actually they never really got going. West Ham doubled up on Jack Grealish, and Ross Barkley wasn't, strong enough on his own to keep the service going to Ollie Watkins. They just had very little going forward. They made some pretty simple mistakes at the back, and both of Lingard's goals for West Ham were probably savable shots by Martinez. And that's maybe the first time that we've started to see the cracks show in that Aston Villa rearguard. But they've also lost 4 out of their last 6. So, this game, look, I don't think we can really take much from that Arsenal result in midweek. If they've 2 red cards and, right before half-time, David Luiz gets sent off, the penalty goes in, the heads go down as they're going into the half-time team talk. This is a really tough game to call. I think it'll be really interesting. For maybe the first time in a long time, Aston Villa, I think, go in as favourites, but Arsenal have the ability to shock anybody, I think.
I would agree. I think Aston Villa will win. I think they're favourites, and rightly so. But just going back to David Luiz, I watched the game, and I watched it on Bein Sports on an Arabic channel on my TV, and didn't understand what they were on about, but I couldn't really see any contact. It looked like that the forward basically kicked David Luiz's leg, and
there's definitely contact there, and by the letter of the law, he doesn't make an attempt to get the ball, and therefore it's a red card. Like, the rule is pretty black and white. That's a very particular example of when, the rule maybe breaks down a little bit. And I think we saw it as well with, is it Bednarek that got sent off for Southampton as well? Very similar tackle. I don't think David Luiz had any, or should have had any complaints. The law's the law, the ref enforced it correctly.
I think, David Luiz, I think if it was anybody else, it might have been debated. But because it was David Luiz and that haircut, he had to go. He just had to go. Any hope for Arsenal, Joe?
I actually think that Arsenal are favourites for this game. Like you said, Fino, Villa haven't been on a good run of form. They've lost 4 of 6, and they didn't deserve to beat Southampton the other week. And from the match that I was watching, I think Arsenal could have been 3-0 up against Wolves before Luiz got sent off. They're actually playing pretty well. So I don't think that they'll have anything to fear, and if they can keep 11 players on the pitch, I think they'll beat Villa.
Yeah, I think this is absolutely a win for Arsenal because David Luiz won't be able to play, so that won't help them enough.
Right, so we're divided on this fixture. Burnley against Brighton at 4 o'clock. Burnley comfortably beaten by Manchester City, who probably could have scored a couple more, against Brighton, Kev, who shocked us all. Now, I didn't see this game. I was checking the score because I chalked it down and said, okay, for Newcastle, if Burnley, Fulham lose, okay, we need Brighton, we'll definitely lose. That was my cert. Brighton, obviously, I think it was the jammiest goal I've ever seen, the winning goal for Brighton. But were they value for money? Were they?
They were pretty good. They were probably about as good as they were in the game down there where they got a draw. It was a jammy goal, but honestly, they were pretty good. Liverpool were out of ideas. I think Klopp said it was something to do with fatigue, maybe mental fatigue, much as anything else. But Brighton were just as they have been whenever I've watched them, like fairly good, fairly impressive. like absolutely no problem really with the result. We'll talk about Liverpool a little bit later on, but don't forget Brighton have now beaten Liverpool and Spurs in the last 2 games, so you'd have to say odds-on favourites for this one.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. I think that's going to do them wonders in terms of, the 3 points not only gets them further up the table, but it also gives them the confidence to go into a crunch game like this and probably be a bit more expansive, knowing that they've picked up 6 points that they maybe didn't think that they were going to get previously.
They've won 3 of their last 4, Brighton, and they're unbeaten in 4. And more importantly, they've kept 4 clean sheets in a row. They are really, really solid now. Like I said last week, they found this defensive trio of Webster, Dunk, and White, and they're just really, really solid. And I can only see them going further up the table.
It's interesting you talk about Brighton's defence, but I mean, what is it with English goalkeepers at the moment and absolute howlers? Because if we talk about Burnley, I mean, Man City's first goal was brutal for Nick Pope. He just absolutely flapped at it. And okay, couldn't do anything for the second though. But if you're an English football fan, it doesn't exactly bode, it doesn't give you much confidence, going into the Euros in the summer.
We've always got Alex McCarthy. He only let 9 in of the week.
I will come to that very soon, Joe. Burnley, though, guys, they lost the last 2, but this is the kind of game that Burnley win. When the back's to the wall and they haven't performed well and they just dig out a result, in your face kind of attitude. So I fancy Burnley to get a result here. Big game, St James's Park, also at 4 o'clock. Now, I'm not going to go to Kevin route and complain about all the defenders missing, but Newcastle have 5 defenders out and Kieran Clark's wife is about to have a baby. So there's a chances are he might not make it either. On the positive side, Joe Willock might make his debut, and Newcastle have recalled Christian Atsu. Maxi might start his first game of the season. Newcastle were beaten by Palace, and as for the first time this season, I'm actually not that disappointed about it because we absolutely dominated the game, and that's all that you want. You want to see them have a go. Jamie Carragher makes me sick when he's on Sky Sports talking about Newcastle fans and their expectations. Newcastle fans know they're not going to compete with Man City and Chelsea because they don't have the money. What they want to see is a bit of fight and a bit of drive and try and compete with the likes of Southampton and Everton and Villa and West Ham. And these teams, in the last 3 games since Graham Jones has come in, Newcastle have managed 56 shots on goal. That's more than the previous 7 games altogether, it's an amazing stat, really. Joe, you pulled something out last week and you're very correct, and you said that you thought Palace were going to park the bus. Palace have the oldest team in the Premier League, and they're all full of seasoned veterans, experienced players all across the park. Nathaniel Klein and Andros Townsend doubled up on St Maxime. They were so tight at the back. They had 3 shots on goal. They got their 2 goals, Palace, and they sat back and parked the bus for the rest of the game. And in fairness to them, Newcastle couldn't break them down. So I left the game obviously disappointed we lost, but I thought, okay, we're having a go now. And Newcastle are in a terrible place in the position in the table, but I do feel that better days are coming, enough to hopefully keep us up. Now, before you go on about Southampton and what happened, you guys midweek, I've read that you've got more or less a full strength team, but for me it's like a wounded animal. Southampton are going to do absolutely everything. They're going to give everything because they would have been humiliated for the second time, and I'm actually worried about this game. I think you've got all across the pitch better players. Southampton beat Newcastle convincingly earlier on in the season, so even though you lost 9-0 and I'm upbeat, I'm not overly confident that we'll get the win in this one.
I think we have a lot of injuries, actually. We're missing Walker Peters, we're missing Theo Walcott, we're missing Romeu, Diallo. I think you're right Danny Ings will play. Yeah, they'll play. But no, I think you're right in that this doesn't feel like another Leicester for Southampton. I think when we lost 9-0 to Leicester, we were literally at rock bottom. This just felt like a really awful night. We should remember we have had a very good season. We've had some fantastic performances. We're just on a bad run. And I think against Man United, there were a lot of mitigating circumstances. Obviously, the lad getting sent off after 90 seconds, it was only really going to go one way. And then Mike Dean did his best to make it even worse. And I just don't know where it's going to go. Obviously, we're going to have to fight back and show something. I think Minamino, who we signed from Liverpool on transfer deadline day, will play, and I think he'll offer a massive boost. But it just depends how shocked the players are, because I think a lot has happened after the match, especially so the young lad Jankovic. I think the word is he is completely broken by this whole experience. It's been a nightmare for him. To be sent off after 90 seconds of your debut is terrible, and he's received so much abuse, racial abuse on social media afterwards. I think it's been a really difficult week for the club and for the manager. So I'm not sure if this week they'll bounce back or whether it will be the week after. I just wonder if it might be a little bit too soon.
I do think Southampton, you're spot on, Joe. It was just a terrible night, and what better team in the Premier League to come back from a 9-0 defeat than a team that has already suffered a 9-0 defeat? If I'm Newcastle, probably have circled this game before the season started and gone, probably not going to get all 3 points here. So in some ways, I do wonder whether or not the Newcastle staff might be more interested about what's going on at Turf Moor between Burnley and Brighton. But I do think that you're right in terms of it's such a shame that there was such a backlash towards the young player that got sent off. He didn't mean to injure McTominay in any way, shape or form. It was just sheer youthful exuberance. He's 19 years old. He's making his Premier League debut. These things just got the better of him.
There's really only one person to blame for that sending off, though, isn't there, Joe? Let's be clear on this, because what had you written in our chat just before that game kicked off? Can you remember what you wrote?
I think I said, keep an eye on Jankovic. He's going to be our next star. And then literally 2 minutes later, Fino just said, oh no. And I thought that Man United must have scored or something. I never in a million years thought he'd have been sent off. But I think that's the thing, is that he has genuine star potential, this guy. He could be a serious player. And I just hope we haven't, lost him for the next 18 months or, 2 years.
No, and the point I made then, like joking, it is obviously a joke, but I remember Lionel Messi got sent off after 90 seconds of his debut for Argentina. All right, it wasn't his debut for Barcelona, but 90 seconds of his debut for Argentina, he got sent off. If this guy is a star, honestly, I'm sure he's good enough to come back from this, Joe.
One more thing, JP. Obviously, Jan Bednarak did get sent off. Somehow Mike Dean saw that as a sending off offence, but that has been rescinded, so he is available, and that's a massive boost, because if we didn't have him, we'd be really, really struggling for numbers. So at least with him, we'll still have Bertrand, Stevens, Bednarak in the defence, which will make massive difference for us.
Yeah, I think the core of the squad is there. I mean, like the two boys up front, Adams and Ings, you've Ward-Prowse in midfield, Redmond to come off the bench. So I still think there's enough quality there to probably overcome what Newcastle have. I mean, what I will say is that I think we'll create a lot of chances, because that's what we're doing now. Almiron's got a freedom. I hope that you won't pay too much attention, although you probably will, to how Crystal Palace handled, say, Maxime doubled up on him, the winger and the full back stuck on him. He seems to be naming the same team every week now as well. So whereas Fino used the word spooked, what happened to Everton when Newcastle decided to attack and do the high press, Palace knew that was coming. So I think Southampton will also know that it's coming, and I don't know if Southampton's defence is solid. I think you'll win. Now Newcastle scored the goal after 2 minutes. John Joe Shelby with it on the half volley. So if we get a good start, it won't make a difference either. It could go either way. I don't want to call it, but right now I'd take a draw. Fino.
Just to round off the Southampton game, I do want to just talk about Jankovic, and Joe, you alluded to it there, that it seems like he's had a pretty horrendous week. And I think whilst this is a football podcast and we want to talk about and focus on the football, I think, it feels remiss of us to not discuss that kind of giant elephant in the room. And I think it just needs to be applauded the way that Southampton have approached it in terms of the racial abuse, being so proactive in, protecting their young player and their kind of swift and decisive approach, helping the police in their investigations. And I think we're starting to see that more and more with, West Brom did the same thing with Romaine Sawyers. And you see it time and time again now with Chelsea and Manchester United. There needs to be a broader appreciation for what Southampton are doing in terms of protecting their players.
I did like Marcus Rashford's comments after the incident last week. He just said, basically, he came out and I think he retweeted and said, look, yeah, I'm black, I'm proud, and I'm going nowhere. Which is, he's dead right. And Jermaine Genius, I was listening to him after one of the games last week, and he said, look, it goes to the core. We need to get the Twitters and the Instagrams and the social media sites to get involved more and to do more about it, straight away, and ban these people straight away, and search their phone numbers and their email addresses, what they're using, so they're so they can't come back. Fino.
There's an element of blame to be apportioned with the social media platforms, but I also think that an element of it is simply that these people don't have the platform that they used to have in going to the football and being able to shout it. And so there needs to be that, accountability of, when we are allowed back in the stands, people do call it out. There is an element of self-policing that comes into that. And hopefully, with the mix of, the police and the legal repercussions, as well as the footballing repercussions, if it was a Southampton fan that is found to have been abusing Yankovic, that he can no longer go and see his team. The point blank repercussions need to be quite severe for this kind of behaviour to stop. Otherwise, it will just keep rearing its ugly head.
Yeah, couldn't agree more, Fino. And just to reiterate really what JP said, that Marcus Rashford again is just the voice of, just is so articulate, and just what a voice of a generation almost, as people used to say. I think hits the nail on the head once again. Is an incredibly powerful voice now. And I think that no way we're going away is absolutely spot on,
Yeah, I mean, it's 2021 now. We should be finished with these Muppets. Moving on, Manchester United at home at Old Trafford to Everton. Everton beat Leeds. We know what Man United did. They had a little blip, and I think the little blip is over. And don't get me wrong, I mean, that red card definitely helped them, but I can only see this game going one way.
Regardless of the red card, scoring a goal every 10 minutes is still pretty remarkable, or on average every 10 minutes. But Everton on the other side, they ground out the result against Leeds. I just feel like Man United at the moment need to win this more to keep pace with Man City. It's not going to be easy by any stretch of the imagination, but I think they'll ground it out.
Yeah, here's the thing. They're not going to keep pace with Man City. Like, absolutely no one is. I've got this feeling that this is going to be a tricky game for them. I agree with you that they were, the red cards helped and all the rest of it, but they still did an amazing job against Southampton, of course. But I think this is going to be tricky. Everton traditionally are quite a tricky game for Man United, aren't they? It's like it's not a fun game for Man United. It never is. And I wouldn't be all that surprised if Everton brought them back to earth. Wouldn't be all that surprised.
Did you watch any of the highlights, Kevin, of Leeds and Everton?
No, not of that one, no.
It's similar to the Newcastle game. I thought one-way traffic, and Leeds probably deserved to win. Missed chances, and the goals were kind of soft. I'd say Man United might not make the same mistake, but who knows? The Premier League is a bonkers place. Moving on to Sunday, 1 p.m. Tottenham against West Brom. Now, Paul Merson has come out, obviously ex-Arsenal player, and he said that Tottenham are the most boring team in the league, and I wouldn't disagree with him at the minute. I couldn't even put money on them to beat West Brom at home the way they're playing at the minute. West Brom obviously really need the points, but Jose's got to do something to turn it around.
Yeah, look, I don't really have much to say about this game other than I think Tottenham have been exposed as a one-man team. Without Kane, they seem to just absolutely lack any impetus or vibrancy. I think we were probably all, and I'll count myself in this, all kind of had the wool pulled over our eyes when, they were battering teams. I think that performance against Southampton earlier in the season was probably the best that Tottenham have played all season. And we thought that was going to be, the standard, and actually that's been the very top of the ceiling. But it is West Brom. I can't see Tottenham, after the result they've had, slipping up yet again.
Well, I tell you what's interesting will be, is there a way back into this team for Dele Alli? Because like you talked about them being a one-man team, and we talked about how much they need a plan B. But I think it is interesting, that idea that maybe Kane was papering over a few cracks, and that Dele Alli was a player. It was only like 2 years ago where he was being talked about as an absolute superstar, right? He was being talked, perhaps it wasn't even 2 years, perhaps it was only a year ago. But anyway, it's been talked about as, a potential absolute great. they've lost another couple of players over the years, but while Dele Alli was good and while Kane was there doing the business, you sort of thought, well, like I say, papering over the cracks a little bit. And now with Dele Alli gone and Kane injured, you sort of think, there's only Son, and then otherwise it's a moderately interesting team, coached in a very negative way. So yeah, not a lot to be excited about if you're a Spurs fan.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And I think we're now at the stage where we can all agree that the Bale experiment has gone horribly, horribly wrong. And it's really disappointing. I was really so excited about him, come back to the Premier League. But I watched him against Brighton 2 games ago, and he just looks petrified of being injured the whole time. He's not running at full pelt. He's not going into tackles. I think his body has essentially given up on him in the same way that we've seen in other sports, whether it's Andy Murray in tennis. He obviously just worked so hard throughout his 20s. His body has just given up, and it's it's such a shame to see.
Yeah, I think, Kev, your point about Dele Alli is really interesting, because I think we've not talked about West Ham really in any depth, but Jesse Lingard, the difference between somebody who just is playing again, he's gone through that same kind of outcast scenario, at Man United, and then he's gone somewhere else, and he's felt the love a little bit, and all of a sudden he's back to his kind of effervescent self. Whereas Dele Alli, he missed out on that move to PSG. Is there a bit of bad blood between him and Mourinho? We don't know, but let's see.
Lads, did we forget to do Fulham West Ham?
Yeah.
Jeez.
No one will forgive us.
Oh, sorry, Fino.
It's fine.
Okay. Then down at Craven Cottage, 6:30, we have Fulham against West Ham. Fulham beaten by Leicester. West Ham, who lost to Liverpool, bounced back with that win at Villa Park. And they're sitting pretty at the minute, Fino.
Yeah. On paper, this is a no-brainer. I just hope that we see the West Ham that we saw against Aston Villa compared to the West Ham that Kev and I saw when we played Liverpool. That team was completely listless, and the team that played against Villa, we were, playing intricate patterns of play. We dominated the game. Lingard, he scored 2 decent goals, but Martinez will have been unhappy that he let them both in. Joe's been an avid admirer of Ogbonna and Dawson at the centre back pairing. They dealt with Watkins well, even though he did get a goal. West Ham, very positive. We sit 5th. Our next 2 games are both against teams in the bottom 3. We've got Fulham, and then I think it's Sheffield United, I can't remember. Whilst, teams around us are all playing each other. We've talked about, you've got Man U, Everton, you've got Liverpool, Man City, Tottenham, Man City. So the next 2 weeks, I think, are going to be very interesting for West Ham fans.
Yeah, I think West Ham are slowly turning into a David Moyes-esque Everton of yesteryear, and yeah, they're becoming very hard to beat. Wolves against Leicester at 3:00. Wolves, they have that bounce back ability after beating Arsenal, albeit fortuitous thanks to the red card against Leicester, who won against Fulham. This could be a very open game. I'm not sure Wolves would beat Arsenal without the red card, so I fancy Leicester to take all 3 points here.
Yeah, I completely agree. I don't think Wolves would have beaten Arsenal until the David Luiz situation, should we put it. Leicester were very impressive again when I think James Maddison set up both of the goals. He's just been a real joy to watch in the last few weeks. They had a bit of a dodgy run, didn't they, where they didn't win for a couple of games, but I fully expect them to beat Wolves for sure.
Yeah, I think the other thing, if you're a Leicester fan, you're excited about Ricardo Pereira, right? I think everyone's really thrilled to have him back, and if he gets back to anything like the form that he showed, he should be a real handful, and could make the difference between them between now and the end of the season, I think.
In my notes, I actually talked about the other fullback, James Justin, and what a finish he had for Leicester's second goal. They scored 2, but they also had 3 chopped off. That second goal from Leicester was really something pretty special. I'm not going to say it was like the Liverpool goal against West Ham, but just simply the quickness of the attack, and then the smarts, I suppose, the intelligence from Justin to be able to go round the goalkeeper, having sprinted 80 odd metres. Clearly, they're very full of confidence. They're strong away from home. Wolves, as we've said, don't think they were going to win, so I don't think they'll win here.
Speaking of special goals, João Moutinho's goal for Wolves against Arsenal was an absolute cracker. Now, Anfield, 5:30 on Sunday. Now, Kev, I know you do a lot of reverse psychology and a lot of balking, but if Liverpool lose this game, are they out of the title race?
I'm going to question the premise of your question because they're already out of the title race. No, I mean, I'm not
Oh
even joking.
God.
I'm really not. No, it's not Balkan. It's not. You've got a team there now leading the lead. Who've got like a healthy lead. They're not going to be stopped anyway. I think the only way they could be stopped is if someone won absolutely every game that they played this season, and it's not going to happen. You've just got, City are back to being a proper game. The rest of the league, including Liverpool, had a chance to knock them out of the title race over the first 10 games of the season and failed to, or first 12 games or 14 games or whatever it was, totally failed to. And now City have got it wrapped up, and Liverpool certainly are not in any kind of condition to do it. And, we talked, a lot about the defensive absentees and so on, and Liverpool made some kind of, attempt to rectify that during the transfer window, signed a couple of players but at bargain basement prices. But it doesn't alter the fact that they've been, generally speaking, have lacked like quite a lot of spark, right? And it's fine, I suppose, every now and then to draw on a Shaqiri or someone else to put in a performance that can help you win a game. But it was pretty shocking the other night. Shaqiri didn't seem to know where to stand some of the time. He seemed to get in the way in some of his runs of Firmino. It was a very, very disappointing game all round. And the idea that Liverpool could win this without home fans in place, honestly, the only way I can see that they'd win it is if Guardiola actually messes up and Guardiola does a Guardiola. I've not been one of those people who criticises him very much at all, but people who have criticised him for what he does sometimes in Champions League fixtures, right? And he sometimes overthinks it or seems to overthink it, seems to want to put together a plan for that one individual game. Well, maybe he'll do something daft like that. But honestly, if Man City just come out and play, number one, there's no way Liverpool, they've got this perfect defence pretty much with Ruben Dias now leading that line. And honestly, they're bound to score at some point, aren't they, against a fairly dodgy Liverpool defence?
Kev, you did say that you were a fan of records being there to be broken, and I think, haven't they just down Anfield Roadway? I mean, 68 games unbeaten or something like that at home, and then losing at home to Burnley and Brighton. I think Liverpool have gone 3 games without scoring at home, and they've never gone 4 home league games without scoring in their history. So, they're in some historically poor striking form against arguably one of the best defensive records the Premier League has ever seen. As you said, John Stones and Ruben Dias, 12 clean sheets in the last 13 starts that they've had. That's not even good defensive play. That's stunning defensive play. I can't see... Liverpool don't look like the same force that they were. And I said that last week. I said that West Ham played the champions rather than the 11 players that were on the pitch. I don't see Guardiola and Man City making that same mistake.
It's almost as if the roles are reversed. Sorry, from last season, how Liverpool played last season, how mean they were with Van Dijk and Man City's problems. But the Man City earlier on the season, I mean, the defence was clearly there. It was just brilliant. But they weren't scoring goals. We're saying they need a striker. They're, like Joe said, last week or the week before, they're doing all this sometimes without a recognised striker on the pitch. I don't know. I think Liverpool could be the team to do it, because they've got the strikers. We've seen Salah last week. It just takes 1 or 2 of those Liverpool strikers just to have a moment and turn it on. They're world class,
Similar to your point, Kev, about Guardiola potentially messing it up, Guardiola might overanalyze this game and say, this is a game that I can draw, rather than a game that I have to win. And if he goes in with that mentality, then I think Liverpool have a chance. If he goes, this is the opportunity for us to win the league, essentially.
I'd go even further, Fino. I don't think it's just an opportunity to win the league. It's an opportunity to lay a ghost, to use a bit of a journalistic parlance. But I think they really are. This is an opportunity for them to go and win really well, and then put to bed all their fears of Anfield, which has been like a shocker for them lately, right? Mm-hmm. They've come to Anfield and seen titles go, they've seen other competitions go, and I think they could come here and not just make a statement, but psychologically say this place has no fear for us anymore. And I tell you what, if they do come out, if he does come, he does say he's going to be defensive, and they do think, well, maybe we'll nick one on the break or something like that. I think that would be a terrible sign, actually, because I think Man City should be coming here and thinking there's a 4-0 win, there's a 4-0 humiliation to be taken from this game.
I think Guardiola will have too much respect for Liverpool to come and think we're going to win 4-0. These are, like I said, world-class forwards, and they will be hurting from last season when Liverpool took their crown away. But in the Brighton game, Kev, did Liverpool create many chances?
They had waves, I would say. They went through little phases of creating, semi chances. But no, did they come and batter the goal? Did they, were they unlucky? Like no Liverpool fan, I don't think, apart from the goal was a bit streaky, like you said. But Liverpool weren't unlucky to not have scored. The team is not there. And I mentioned this once before, but the team like 3 years ago that was so exciting, right? So the team that ended up losing the Champions League final to Real Madrid, that year, the attacking play was just mind-bogglingly out of this world. And clearly trade-offs were made in subsequent years. And obviously the arrival of Virgil van Dijk helped that, and Alisson Becker in goal helped that enormously. But there was still, they became a much less exciting team over the last 18 months, much more pragmatic. Yeah, as I've said before, able to find a way to win a game either on the pitch or thanks to the analysis off the pitch and so on. But that idea of blitzkrieg, against opposition, particularly within the first half, that completely disappeared. And sometimes you just think, oh God, I'd love to see that again. But they've lost it. They've lost any capacity to do that. So in terms of, should they have scored? Did they have lots of chances? Should they have scored? I mean, no, nothing like the sort of Liverpool team that some people haven't, maybe you don't watch them every week, may have had, because that was 2 years ago and they just don't play like that anymore.
I just want to finish on Man City. So they've won 9 in a row. And I have to say, I think they've been in first gear for all of those 9 games. You look at who they've beaten. They've beaten Burnley, Sheffield United, West Brom, Palace, Newcastle, Brighton, all teams in the bottom 6. They haven't really played any of their major rivals. Yes, they played Chelsea when they were in a bad run. But I think Man City have been in first gear, and I think they're going to come to Liverpool, and I think they're going to want to absolutely pummel them. So if they really get going, I think it could be a difficult afternoon for Liverpool.
Could it be a 9-0, Joe?
I don't think it'll be a 9-0 unless Liverpool get a player sent off after 90 seconds, which you never know.
Or Mike
Right,
Dean's.
I think Man City will win, but I do think Liverpool will breach the defence. I think it'll be 2-1 to City. Fino, last word?
Oh no, I was just making a joke that unless it's Mike Dean that's in the middle, that
Mike Dean will wear a Southampton shirt to bed. Final game on Sunday night, 8:15 Central European time. The Blades, Sheffield United, who I told you, the fight is on, beat West Brom, are at home to Chelsea. Thomas Tuchel's Chelsea have won 2 on the spin. This could be a good game, guys, and I really think Sheffield United will, give this a go. And they pummeled the West Brom goal in the end. I'll give them a fighting chance to get the result. Of course, on paper, Chelsea are way better. But if the Great Escape could be on, this is a game they have to win. They've won 3 of the last 6. But I just think the Chelsea players, they have a lot to prove to Tuchel, and the ones that were in his side for the last few weeks that collected those 6 points will want to keep their places.
Yeah, look, it was a good win for Sheffield United, but it was a basement battle, and I do think that Chelsea are a cut above Sheffield United, and they should win easily here. I think, they dominated Spurs, I felt, and Tuchel, there's signs there, small signs all the same, that they are maybe turning the corner. If Sheffield United win against Chelsea, I don't think it's as much of a shock as their win against Man United, but it will come as a big shock to me.
Indeed. 1 game left on Monday night. Leeds, who were beaten by Everton at home to Crystal Palace, who I found out firsthand, and of course Joe said last week, have a mean defence. They're very organised. I will say that Will Zaha went off with 20 minutes to go, pulling his hamstring. But that boy Eze is a cracking player. He really is a super footballer. He's a clone of Will Zaha on the other wing almost, And Leeds attack. I think if Palace score an early goal here, this game's only going to go one way. I fancy Palace to get a result, maybe a draw. Fino?
Yeah, I think again, Leeds' defensive failings at set pieces were, plain to see against Everton, for that winning goal. And I do think that the way that Palace set up oftentimes, when they get a free kick or they get a corner, they're going to pile players forward. They'll play those set pieces. they'll know that that's Leeds' weakness. I do wonder, though, if they get an early goal, whether that suits Leeds, because then they are just wave after wave of attack. It'll be an interesting game. I think it's a good Monday night game. I don't really know which way to call it, to be honest.
I think Leeds got a couple of injuries. I think Rodrigo's out. That's all I say. Difficult to call, like I say, but if injuries are starting to hurt Leeds, then maybe this is not the game for them to get back. I don't know.
Yeah, Palace didn't offer a whole lot going forward. Literally, all they did in the first half was they scored the 2 goals. That's all they had to do. But they just defended for the rest of the game, basically. And Newcastle couldn't break them down. I mean, Leeds obviously will have a lot more invention going forward than Newcastle. Yeah, so that's it, guys. Big weekend of football. Huge game at Anfield. Really, I mean, this could be poetic justice if Man City can pull it off. Kev,
yeah,
what have you got for us?
With apologies to Rudyard Kipling. If you can keep your head with all about you losing theirs, you're probably not the manager of Southampton or Spurs, or equally of Liverpool, whose home form now is desperate as match week 22 brings these 3 sides a dark assessment. The 9th circle of hell, for Saints that is Old Trafford. They came with such bright hopes but went home completely shattered. United on cloud 9 throughout an eloquent recital. Do they still have a chance of pipping City for the title? An early red for Saints, then who taps in? It's Wan-Bissaka. Rashford gets the second, then an own goal makes things darker. Cavani heads the 4th, then a short wait for number 5. Martial lament for McTominay's great drive. Fernandes strokes a spot kick. Martial strikes again. James rounds off the scoring. Well, at least it wasn't 10. The saving grace for Saints is that they've been down here before. Can Ralph spark another comeback? This time, I'm not so sure. And no one seems convinced these days Mourinho's going to stay. 3 defeats in 3, that suffocating style of play. Losing out to Chelsea's not a sackable offence. What's put him under threat is that obsession with defence. And Liverpool, well, sad to say, the fans are now accustomed to performances bereft of all their former cut and thrust, and it wasn't all that strange to see them overrun by Brighton, a 1-0 loss, and now it's the top 4 for which they're fighting. How lovely it must be to be a citizen these days. Opponents left quite mesmerised by their recent displays, as lush as Schumann's fairy tales for piano and viola, the true apotheosis del football de Guardiola. If you can keep your head while all about you there is fever, if you have the authority of a viral Jackie Weaver, if you can shrug off problems and make light of all your fears, still you won't exude the calm of City's Ruben Dias. Immaculate as always against Burnley in midweek, he has the perfect temperament, exemplary technique. City paid a lot for him, but not without good reason. There's no one with a better claim for player of the season. Unless it's Jesse Lingard, who's impatient to get going. 2 goals against the Villa and a brilliant West Ham showing. But no, let's face it, City have the honours all sewn up. The league looks a formality, as does the FA Cup. I don't say this too lightly, even thinking it is hard, but Sunday's game at Anfield is a changing of the guard.
Great stuff, Kev. Thank you very much.
Cheers. Pleasure.
Thank you, Joe.
Good luck on Saturday, JP.
We might need it. Thank you, Fino.
Cheers, guys.
Thank you for listening, folks. Don't forget, if you are listening on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button and the like. And we'll be back again on next Tuesday before our next round. This has been the Irishman, Englishman and Scotsman Football Podcast. Have a great weekend and enjoy the games. Thank you for listening. If you'd like to hear more of our podcasts, please click on the red subscribe button on the bottom right-hand side. Thank you.